Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the daily Gen AI news briefing with the team from GAI Insights, where we rate and debate the importance of the latest enterprise AI news, giving it a final rating of essential, important, or optional. I'm Adam Rappaport, research analyst and tech wizard. Today I have with me some of the usual suspects, John Sviokla, Paul Bayer, and Ankaj Handa, and our returning guest tonight, Ashish Bhatia. He's a principal product manager for the AI Builder in the Power Platform for Microsoft. Welcome back, Asha. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
All around smart, insightful dude.
We love your commentary as well when you're listening in the chat. So it's really always great to have you with us.
Yeah, this is my favorite morning routine.
I love it. Great to have you. Please, if you want to follow along from home, the articles can be found on our website. It's gaiinsights.com/articles. Ankaj, with that, let's kick things off.
Sure, thanks, Adam. So the first one that we have for today comes from AI2 and talks about Olmo, which is now available on iOS.
Olmo on iOS. Ashish, what's the news here?
Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting. They are making this open source model available on iPhones and iPads, mobile device. So super interesting news in that sense. Whenever I look anything that is happening on the mobile phone AI, I feel like this is the way AI will be consumed by masses. This is how you distribute AI across. Mobile phone did this. If you, again, have ever been to India, they have transformed mobile payment and it's a cashless economy now. And it's surprising how pervasive cashless payments are in India because of mobile phone, and AI will be distributed like that as well, I feel. And when I look at news like this, I'm like, where is Apple in this? Like, it's one of the Max 7s in this conversation, right? This is their gig, to be honest. But again, anybody who's interested in frontline work, enabling frontline workers, they should absolutely be looking at AI on the device and some kind of a hybrid model that for reasoning like things, you go on the web, otherwise everything is computed on the device. So super interesting news. The article is super light, so I was kind of split between optional and important, but that's just my point of view.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you think, given the ubiquity of frontline workers, I mean, across industries, that it might sort of touch a wide enough scope that it's worth putting important on to draw attention?
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to enable frontline workers with intelligence, you should absolutely kind of read this, and there are some takeaways for you. If that's not your thing, then maybe it's optional because super light on details.
That touches a ton of industries. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I was between important and essential. I agree it's a little lighter than I'd like, but this is a completely open model, right? Open weights, open data, open tuning. I mean, the whole routine. And the thing we didn't mention, which I think is incredibly important, is healthcare. I've been staying in touch with a group called GV out of India, where they've launched a thing on the phone that allows you to do differential diagnosis. And one of the companies backing GV is the largest ambulance provider in India, and they are within 20 minutes of 950 million people. And if you can do an edge device that helps with differential diagnosis or anything around that, and then you have the whole thing around, I think the other thing is agriculture, that a lot of the problem in the distribution of agricultural knowledge is that local variations make a ton of difference. And so very small, just microclimates and so forth, and practices. So you have this fantastic agricultural knowledge that's created and then has a hard time being used in the field. I think this would really allow for a conversation with farmers and so forth in the field. So I think those two things alone are going to be, really groundbreaking, especially as we go into a deeper tariff regime. I don't know if we're going all the way to, Smoot-Hawley, but I think there's going to be a lot more local creation of capability and application of intelligence. So I was leaning between important and essential.
Paul, the voice of reason for the busy AI leader who's trying to come up with a strategy.
Yeah,
as opposed to me, the voice of reason.
I was on the other side, optional. I mean, I think this is a trend we've been talking now for 2 years. It's an everyday vector miracle. I think the challenge with all the open things is security. These are groups of leaders who are running groups of people. Everyone's bringing your own intelligence. How do I think about security and everything else? So I think that still needs to be worked out, and so possibly important, but certainly not essential in my view.
Wow, I read the security thing exactly the opposite. You're more secure.
It's on device.
5,000 people, and as an AI leader, how do I make sure that those 5,000 devices on those ambulances are within my security framework and meeting all the governance issues here?
But Paul, it's coming. Isn't that enough? No, let's
everything's coming here. Yeah,
I know. Let's split the difference then. We'll call it important. Thanks, Akash. Let's move along.
Okay, the next one that we have comes from Wayfair, and it talks about how they are offering GenAI-based visual search.
Yeah, John, why don't you tell us what's going on with Wayfair?
Yeah, well, I was definitely having a Back to the Future moment. Back when we started the market space course in 1995, we talked about this. So here we are, near 30 years later, and it's on the phone. Looks great, works wonderfully. I put it in the category of everyday miracles. It's great. You can sample reality. You can put your reality into it. You can take inspiration. It becomes 3D. You can place things within it. But to me, it's optional reading. This is just par for the course, in terms of new interaction and the integration of what we call market space and marketplace, so that you can imagine what you would like to have. It's fantastic for Wayfair, because if I'm them, I have to differentiate against Amazon, and that interaction is, how I steal, interactions from the big providers, Walmart, Amazon, Target, and so forth, is really important to my business model. So important for Wayfair, optional for all.
And 12 billion in revenue for the 12 months leading up to last June. You got to wonder how they've been doing since then. So Ashish, what did you think about this one?
So one of the things that I always think, like with AI, you have to rethink the way you deliver value to customers, right? And this, for me, kind of hit that mark. Like, think about it this way, that any marketplace you go, it's a recommendation kind of economy. You're always recommended what to buy next. And this, for me, is a pull model where, again, whoever is the audience is creating this reality and then figuring out what works for them versus somebody telling them. So it's a change of mindset in that sense. And I thought that it is a super interesting kind of, wouldn't say AI native, but AI led scenario in that sense.
So what's your rating then?
I'm still with John. I think it's optional, but super interesting.
I'm kind of optional port here. Wayfair, about a year and a half ago, I was at somebody, I forget the gentleman I talked with. They have 14 million items in the catalog. They were using AI to generate product descriptions that are customer friendly, because it comes in with a short description and no image from the manufacturer. So that in itself was transformative here. And I think the interesting things about e-commerce, and John, you and I saw it at that peer dinner we had a couple of weeks ago, is that because it's recommendation engine, there's not a lot of downside risk. A lot of the e-commerce risks can take more risk with Gen AI. They can push the envelope. The major retailer we were with at dinner was talking about they're pushing it hard, because worst case, it's just a recommendation that maybe off a lit. So a little hallucination doesn't hurt the recommendation engines in many things here. So I think let me be more clear. I think optional for the everyday AI leader, important for ones that are doing e-commerce. And I think the experience issue here, because John, this is all we're talking about. This is attention economy here. We're going to short-term videos and everything in here. Attention counts here, and and Wayfair has been unbelievable in navigating the Amazon superpower over there, finding niches that work here, and they're continuing to do it here on the e-commerce side. And they're ahead of Amazon in this.
Yeah, and headquartered in Boston, right? Let's go.
There you go, baby.
With that, let's call it optional though, and move along. Thanks, Ankash.
Yep. The next one comes from Entity Data, and it unveils insights on GenAI adoption in banking.
Yeah, so we have a survey here, the results of a survey from NTT. and they surveyed a fairly large group. It was over 800 banking leaders, and they have a bunch of insights, and they break it down by region. Mostly what they found, though, was I don't know how much there is to do with it. So they talk about really that there's a split between the pressures for cost optimization as opposed to, it was just there on the screen, increases or in productivity, right? So I don't know. That's kind of what I thought would be the two things, and that the banks are all experiencing a lot of pressure to demonstrate the ROI, which I think we probably would expect as well from their investments. So it has a lot of data. They did a fairly extensive survey. There's sort of some differentiation by regions in terms of where those pressures are, but generally I thought it was optional, perhaps unless you're in the financial services industry. Any dissenting or supporting takes on that?
No, I think the only definitely optional. NTT plays an interesting role in Japan broadly and in telecoms in general. They are providing more and more AI-based capability. I know they've got a big application that they're using, for example, in human resources management and so forth, but definitely optional.
Yeah, Adam's interesting. We've really struggled with kind of the general AI leader across all industries in one specific or industry. I sent an email to 25 people to read our daily newsletter, asking them for feedback. And the first feedback was, I want to read all the essential articles. So a lot of people didn't know you could do that from a website. But the second piece of feedback is people really want these articles tagged by their industry. So I think as we mature this offering, be able to say, oh, this is financial services, show me essential in financial services for the last 6 months here is a natural for the AI leaders as they become even more industry focused. But for the everyday AI leader, optional in my mind.
We just need more metadata.
So Adam, when I did this yesterday, I actually sent it right away to two of my kind of friends who are in the banking sector. And it was like, for me, this is like, if you're in this sector, this is kind of mirror, right? It tells you what you probably already know. And if you don't know, it should kind of highlight that for you. But what I found lacking in the article was like action, like what should I do, right? What are things that I should grab and go right now? That was missing for me. Otherwise, it was interesting.
I thought the same and forgot to say it. Absolutely. It's like, okay. It's kind of what either, okay, now I understand, or it's kind of what I thought.
Yes.
So now what? Yeah, a little more thought leadership would have gone a long way. Let's call this optional as well and move along, Ankash. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is a use case from Microsoft where Accenture Health is boosting employee productivity with Gen AI.
Yeah, Ashish, we've got 11,000 nursing hours saved and nearly $800,000. What tell us about this product here?
Yeah, so again, this company Accenture, they are using Azure OpenAI, which is Azure's deployment of OpenAI model, using the Azure AI Foundry as a framework where you build things. And they've built a pretty interesting kind of use case, an appeals use case, which nurses spend a lot of time curating the right response, which is non-technical for kind of everyday patient or whoever is kind of writing that appeal to kind of go through. And they've automated that process with Gen AI kind of appeals response and things like that. It's super interesting in that space. And again, the validation is in the amount of dollars saved and time saved. So all of that is good. What I would love to see a little bit more is the architecture, like how was this built and things like that, stuff that you guys have called out with what AWS does when they put out their customer story. So that I found was kind of missing. Other than that, for healthcare, again, good validation, good scenario to go after as well.
So without a little more depth and detail, you feel it's probably an optional read.
Yeah.
Thanks. Paul?
I had an option. I mean, actually, I had important only because we continue to get so many requests for specific quantified savings and use cases. And I think even if you're not in healthcare, this is a large number. And people not in healthcare look at healthcare as a slow-moving, super conservative space here. So I think for the AI leader in a different industry, this still could be an important use case for generating excitement, generating budgets. So for that reason, I had it as important.
Yeah, I was coming in an optional. It's kind of a light thing. I mean, I could go with important in terms of actually having dollars associated with it. I think one of the things that strikes me some time ago, Jamie Yoder and I wrote an article about 6 things you get from AI. One of them was we said, it can collect the garbage and help you look at the stars, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of very low level stuff like this that, doesn't make things important. And on the other end, you can really explore, it's like, whatever, space gear for the mind, right? You can go to all kinds of places. So this, to me, there's just so many workarounds. There's so many workarounds in organizations because the technology is not intelligent enough, or the intelligence doesn't sit at the point of need. And now, as we move that intelligence to the point of need, we're going to see all kinds of efficiencies like this. So I had it as optional, but I could be persuaded into the great inflation friend of mine, Paul Beyer.
Oh, he's got to throw that in, doesn't he, Paul?
Adam, a day without snark is a day without good living. So this
a day
is
without snark is a day without John.
His middle name is Lowering the Standards. Paul, Lowering the Standards, Beyer.
Look, I mean, I think for a few reasons. One being Microsoft, and you think how many people have Microsoft, and two, Paul, to your point about the actual numbers in the use case. We're having me lean towards important, although optional because it didn't give much detail about it. But the reality is, when it's a bit staggering to consider that this is one single thing that nurses have to do that had this kind of impact, right? And to your point, Paul, as you start to play that out through all of these different roles with all of these different activities that tens and hundreds of thousands of people have to do every day across these large organizations, it's pointing towards this future where there's a massive impact everywhere. Right?
And Adam, I think the quantification is important for the non-Gen AI addicts like ourselves. So I've been in 3 calls in the last 3 or 4 days with senior people who aren't following all this and this is going to pop, right? When's this bubble going to pop, Paul? This is just some edge use cases here. This isn't, and so I think numbers like that. Anyway, I think we're beating the hell out of it. So, Adam, call your vote here. Yeah.
Let's beat it up. No, important. I'm going important on this one. Yeah. And let's move along. Thanks, Ankaj. Workday.
Okay, the next one comes from Workday, and they have unveiled a new agent system of record.
Yeah, John, Workday making their play to run everything for us. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking this important, maybe an essential. First of all, it was, it's fantastic. Something I didn't, just for me, this came out of left field. I mean, it makes a ton of sense once you hear it, right? But the idea that Workday would be the registry for all these digital workers that, we've been writing about makes a ton of sense, right? Workday's all over the place. And, you can, it's just, I think it highlights a really interesting trend, which is the symbiosis between IT and HR when it comes to the application of AI in the firm. I think we're just starting to explore, and back to NTT, for example. NTT has, in Japan, as you may know, in the main, human resources is a higher status job than it is in the US firms and the European firms. And, they're, anyway, for whatever set of reasons, that's true. And so NTT is offering all kinds of capability in terms of upskilling your people, digital workers, that kind of stuff, to their clients. And Workday, I think, can play that role here. So I don't know, definitely important, maybe essential.
Ashish.
I was super confused about this article when I read it. Registry of agent kind of makes sense. A way to manage agent makes sense. I think Jensen Wong has said, right? IT departments will be HR departments of agents. So all of that makes sense. What I did not quite grok from the article was, is there an agent building framework under the hood, right? Or is it just managing layer of how do you manage your agents? So I was super confused about this article myself. I was not sure how should I rate it. So I'll go with whatever is the advice here.
Yeah, Adam, I'm just to do anti-great inflation. I'm like deep in optional. This is an article of a company, publicly traded company that wants to play the agent game, catch up with Salesforce. It's 5 or 6 quotes from their customers. It doesn't have any specifics. It doesn't have a customer. It's not in production. HR has never been good at managing IT. The CIO is going to fight like hell on who manages AI agents here. So I think John's point is really interesting, that companies do need to figure out how to manage 5,000 employees and 30,000 agents. But this particular article, in my view, is a wannabe and shouldn't be read by AI leaders.
So if I can add, like, those are the things all I wanted to say, but I did not know how to articulate it. You said exactly right. That was my thing, right? Sure, it's a visionary outlook of where you want to play, but are you there, right? Do you have that underlying tech? And they did not clarify if there is underlying tech that is available for people to build and then manage those agents. So hypothetical play, visual play, I feel.
John, you want to rebuttal, or shall I weigh in with my opinion first?
No, I found Paul's thing really convincing. It's like, as I think about what's actually in here, you're right. It's like, okay, everybody's. I can just picture the meeting at Workday. It's like, hey, what happened? You know, we're not in this conversation. How do we get into this conversation? Interview some customers, throw out an idea. You know, it doesn't have the framework underneath. Yes, I think more thoughtful heads have convinced me.
So the important point, John, was, I think, as you were sort of caught by, which is this idea of a system to manage all of these digital workers, right? And that's probably the most important takeaway from this, if people haven't caught on to that. Salesforce is a huge competitor of Microsoft. It's wild to think Workday, Salesforce, and Microsoft are doing the land grab for basically the agent management play, right? But it's certainly interesting. But I side with Paul and Ashish on this one, in terms of it probably being more of a product announcement and some catch up. And the only thing I'll add is that this article could have been written by an AI, like O3 Mini High possibly. It's just, you know, chef's kiss. So so good on Workday for getting this out there. And I'm going to go optional news.
Last thing, Adam, they're probably just coming off their global sales meeting. Every global sales meeting, you need some new juice to get everyone juiced up in here. So agents are the thing. You know, they just have their sales club over in Aspen or somewhere. So anyway, I think we beat this thing up.
All right, optional. Last article.
Yeah, so the last one comes from Anderson Horowitz and talks about from prompt to product, the rise of AI-powered web app builders.
Yeah, look, this is I think a really interesting article, and it's an important landscape for our leaders to understand, which is not just within a software development, a coding agent like Cursor that can build your code, but to get all the way from the concept to the web app. So it has to be something that integrates more fully in terms of the infrastructure and deployment and all of these other things. And you know, there's a market map which is a good thing to represent. And this is A16Z to some extent, you know, tooting their own horn and talking about companies that they've invested in. So it's product announcement, but on the edge, I think informative enough and a very valuable space that I was leaning towards important over optional. John, why don't you jump in first here?
Yeah, I was leaning more toward optional. You know, I think you know, their market map stuff. They're I think largely talking their book and so forth. I didn't find it that insightful in terms of. Well, I'm a bit. I was going to say jaded. I'm not sure jaded is the right word. Back in the 1980s, we used to use we wrote a case and taught about Texas Instruments uppercase and lowercase, right? Computer-aided software engineering, and the uppercase stuff was around business process analysis, and lowercase stuff was about implementation. And, we're back there now, right? And we can actually do it at a much higher level. So anyway, I didn't find it that insightful. And it didn't have a lot of, I didn't think it had a lot of new data or insight.
Fair enough. Paul, Ashish, what was your take here?
Yeah, go ahead, Ashish.
Optional for me. Again, that's was my opinion when I read it. I anyways think the idea of prompts to product or apps, I feel it's on a lifeline that people we have been using these kind of fixed UX applications for a while. And if you think a little bit deeper, it is a developer's point of view about how the user should be using this application, because it's fixed layout. And that's going to change, right? We're going to go to this flexible layout that users would make it work however it works for them, which, if you look deeper, is conversational interaction, right? You have your own kind of path to get to the outcome that you want to reach, and no fixed layout will kind of get you there. So that's why I feel applications are generally on kind of some kind of a timeline lifeline, and will get replaced by conversational experiences than applications. So in the interim, sure, prompt to website, prompt to kind of product, prompt to application is fine, but ultimately these will become conversational experiences. It's optional.
Yeah, in a certain way, for me, they're kind of rediscovering the whole notion of objects. You know what I mean? So are those objects active? Are they passive? What's the interface? What do they inherit? What can they generate? You know what I mean? And then, Ankash was saying, that Satya Nadella is talking about the fact that ERPs will be, databases to the agents. Yeah, kind of. I mean, again, to your point, Ashish, it's, how do you conceive of the point of view of the client using the thing, and then what does your enterprise architecture look like? I mean, I think the beauty here is that you can actually go into the muck and drain the swamp or whatever thing. You can actually, the beauty of the large language models is you can take that massive interdependent complexity of existing code base and at least, munch your way through it, which I think is what the real fantastic new stuff is.
Yeah, see, it's interesting, Ashish. I want you to say more, because for me, I thought it would be the natural evolution from text to web app to voice, where eventually I'm just telling the agent what it is I want it to do for me, and it's going to build the app that's needed. Is your objection more the fact that there's a web app, because for the most part the user won't even be involved in whatever it takes to get the job done, so you won't really need a web interface? I'll say, oh, I need this Canva document converted into a PowerPoint, and it'll just go build the code necessary to complete the task and do it for me, so it won't need to make me a page where I can upload my Canva document. Is that what you're saying? Is we're sort of going to get away from this notion of the web interface and the web app?
So the thing that I tell people to visualize this kind of future is Jarvis, right? When Iron Man talks to this kind of voice initiated kind of agent, it curates the dashboard that is in that moment important to Iron Man, kind of gets him the information. It's not a fixed layout application or website anymore, right? So on-demand curation of visualizations, insights, data, so you can get your stuff done. That is the future, in my opinion.
And I guess for me, though, that seems the natural evolution from this. So that these companies are actually the ones well positioned to be developing that. Do you feel like it's going to come from someplace else entirely?
I think for me it was like it's still text to app and website, so that fixed layout, and that is the notion of fixed layout I was trying to kind of break through.
No, that's a fair point. Let's go optional then, and call it there.
Yeah, Adam, I just like to highlight Ashish. I couldn't agree more with Ashish. I mean, I think this fixed layout menu is a green screen of our era. So that stuff's completely going away. I think the other thing, I think this highlights a trend, John in particular has been very taken on, is how we're just getting so much more power at the nodes in these enterprises. So John talking early days of Excel going out and the users and IT being very threatened by it because they want all the mainstream here. Now we got cold things out there that's automating a heck out of, workflows and programs and everything else. So, I think the AI leader needs to think about a world where I've got 5,000 employees, 50,000 agents. Every employee not only has an Office 365, they have a whole set of robots that can automate tasks in a way that stays within that secure environment of the company here. And that's really, really powerful, and a completely different architecture from the, Office 365 productivity mindset, one Google we've had for the last 20, 30 years.
Yep, I'm just mindful of time. Got any parting shots here? Ankash, we got a tote board coming up. Paul, Ashish, Adam, any announcements?
None from my end. We had, I believe, I think we had a second important one there as well. Accenture Health. We actually I called important on it. So we had Accenture Health and the Olmo, the open source iOS on device. So 2 importance, the rest optional. Let's see. Thank you, Ashish, so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you. Always appreciate your insights. And thank you from the whole team to those of you tuning in and joining the discussion. And we'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye now.
Have a good day, folks.